Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. I'm here with Dr. Mary White. Mary, how are you?
I'm doing so good today, Tim. I'm very excited to continue this conversation again. It's valuable, it's necessary, and you know what? You do a really good job of it.
Oh, you're so kind to say that. I really enjoy these conversations. And everybody watching, if you ever see me out in the wild, you can call me Beast, which is the name of this series. So we're talking about continuing the series, as Mary said, and we're talking about the vocational life. Sort of what do you do about your work life and your work identity when you get into the midlife time? So, Mary, that's sort of our context here. We've talked about this a little bit in some of our earlier conversations,
Yeah.
but midlife can start while you're still in your career. But most of the time, we think of it as that time where you might be ending your career and starting not necessarily retirement, but like the next phase. And we've talked about all of the definitions of that. But I do think it's interesting to sort of rethink not only what you're doing, and maybe we're going to talk about being bold and trying some new things, having some new beginnings. I think
Right.
that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight, but also sort of rethinking the way you think about yourself in relation to work. Because a lot of times when we are in the middle of the thick of our lives in our careers and we're so motivated by whatever metric we're using, we tend to think of, if somebody asks you, who are you? You tell them what you do.
Right. Absolutely. There's not even a question, Tim. And I have so many thoughts about this because I recently went through it. So I'm hoping the author, is going to pick up on some of those points and I can relate to them. I'm happy to share, but
Well, how have you reframed the way you think about yourself now that you are no longer in that same role? Are you rethinking yourself in relationship to the world of work?
oh gosh, Tim, this is tough because this was very difficult for me. This transition was really difficult. I worked many hours, devoted many years. It was a very, type A kind of job. I was constantly going, constantly going. I had, just 1,000 emails. I answered emails on the weekends. I answered phone calls on the weekend. Like it was that kind of job. And then for it to be cut off, it was it took me a long time to get, okay, who am I? And who am I? And what do I represent? And I had to take a month in Europe. I think I already told you that, like, just was so, because I don't think I was going to be able to just cut it off like that. So I had to take a month. We went to Europe for a month. And then when I came back, I did have another job lined up for August, but they asked me to come early. So I was like, yes, of course I'll come. And this job is not as stressful. I mean, there's some stressful moments, but it's not as stressful. So there was a gap to me. And
Right.
the gap in terms of hours, in terms of stress, in terms of their socks. Socks always comes in.
Yeah. Thanks for Socks for making an appearance.
And he's biting my arm. So the gap, I just said, I have to fill the gap. And I filled it with a lot of stuff, including like I could swim more. I could come home early and cook dinner or a week, or whatever. Because normally we were cooking all day, every day on Sunday for the whole entire week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So some of that has changed. I could read more books. I could engage more with friends and family. And so that is what has filled the gap, including, being more relaxed and enjoying our life, my husband and our life. That was a long, long answer, wasn't
I
it?
loved that answer. So you have redefined yourself, you've redefined the use of your time, and you have slowed down and you're breathing a little easier because you did have a super high stress, important job. So it's interesting because one of the things on my list to talk about tonight, you just started talking about. So we're going to jump there, which is what he calls, the author of the book we're using, How to Love Midlife by Chip Conley, time affluence, which I love.
I am definitely, I have more affluence of time than I've ever had.
And that's one of the gifts of getting to midlife and making this shift is you can still be busy doing things. You can still make your contribution, as we've talked about. You can still give your gifts back to the world, but you have the luxury of some time and some space in your life.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just delicious. Like, I feel like the when you can really slow down and enjoy that slower pace, I think that's really valuable. And I think we deserve that after a gung-ho, go, go, go career.
I know, but even if you try, Tim, like to convince yourself you deserve that. Not that I don't think I deserve that. It's just that you've never had it, so you're not really sure what to do with it. You
You're
know?
having to get used to the idea.
Yeah. I mean, and I also volunteer. I don't volunteer like I would like to volunteer just because I do have a job, but I'm on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Palm Beach and Martin County. So I mean, I do that. I'm on their board of governors. So that is my volunteer work and do stuff for them. So I think, there's more filling the gap, in a good way.
But the nice thing is I think part of time affluence is you have more control or choices over how you use your time, because your time isn't being so engulfed by your work and your career. And now you're like, I have time for other interests, other things I want to contribute, other ways to do things. And part of this you already just mentioned during that answer, which I loved, is becoming a beginner at things. It's trying new things and being bold enough to become a beginner or something. Because Mary, if you're a beginner at something, you're not going to be good at it. And that can be hard for those of us who are like accomplished and experts in our field. I feel like it's really good for us
And
to be a beginner.
Everybody came to you for the answers. Now you're like, I don't have any answers. I don't have anything, and I don't want to say this is going to sound so terrible, but I was a boss.
Sure.
And now I'm not, so in some ways that's very releasing.
Right. And the other thing is we have to be kind to ourselves and allow ourselves this transition time. Okay. You're not just going to immediately move from this high powered, whatever. It's going to take some getting used to. You're going to have to learn this new way of thinking. But one of the things I think that we can do that's really helpful is to be a beginner at things, try things. And I feel like one of the gifts of the midlife time is that you stop worrying so much about what everybody thinks and what do I look like if I don't know what I'm doing. And you're just kind of like, this is fun. I'm going to do it. Let me go out there and, like me with my baking. Like I started baking during the pandemic and it's sort of one of my midlife things. And I mean, I was really horrible at this at the beginning.
Attest to that.
Yeah.
Kidding.
No, but I was really bad. But my point was I didn't beat myself up for being bad at it. I was like, well, of course I'm not going to be good at this. I've never done it. I've never done baking. I don't know what I'm doing. So all the stumbles and mistakes, I could sort of brush them off. And you know what, Mary? That felt really good.
I think it's wonderful too, like that whole, you took on something that you were not good at. I mean, but you really learned. And remember, you had like all these incredible setups and you had to get all this new equipment. And there was so much great, joy in it and so much great experimentation that I think it's so great.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that at this point in my life, after just 5 years of trying to be a baker, like some of my most prized possessions are like a dish that I'm going to bake something in, really, or my mixer, of course, is one of my prized possessions, which a friend gave me to encourage my baking. All of that, it's a surprise, but it's fun. And it's an example, I think, of, okay, here I'm at midlife. I'm giving myself permission to be bad at something, to be a beginner at something, to try something fun. And I'm able to have the time to do some of it. And that just, I like it.
I know, it's so great. And there is definitely time for that. I went into a couple of color guard rehearsals to a local color guard. And I was like, I really enjoyed this, just going in and then leaving before they even finish their run through,
That's right. But you went in as like a guest star, right? You didn't have the responsibility of running the rehearsal. You came in just to help.
Right. Like I said, oh, they can't do this toss. I can fix that in about 15 minutes. And that was exciting and fun and, and they responded so well and it was great. And I loved doing it, could do a little bit more of that. I mean, I was just volunteering for a local color guard, but
I think it's wonderful that you did that. But that's an interest of yours that you can always go back and draw on and give back. And that's part of the example again, is you can do as much or as little of whatever you want to, of whatever you're interested in. And it's great that you stay involved in that in certain ways. You do some judging in the fall, that kind of thing. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Yeah, something I would like to do, I'm just sharing that I'd like to teach a class, like a college class. I mean, I did that when I was with the school district, and the program was about being part of the school district. So I couldn't keep that class, but I'd really like to teach. I taught master's level students and I loved it. I found it to be very rewarding and enriching. And
Well, then
so,
do it. Put it out there in the world. I mean, you have every qualification and expertise to do that. So make that happen. I think that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And I have time to do it. Like, I have time.
Exactly. You have the time. And this is one of our points, everybody, is you become time affluent. You have time to become a beginner. You have time to make choices. And as Gary, who's watching, hey, Gary, thanks for watching, commented, you move from being controlled by the schedule to controlling the schedule. That's a freedom that is almost uncomfortable at first. You've already tested that it was not, you're like, what do I do with myself? And what do I do with all this time? And then you kind of figured it out.
I really like what Gary said about the schedule, because I knew my calendar 2 and 3 months out. Like I could say, well, February 4th, I know that I have to go to back meetings. Like I knew it like inside my head. I lived and died by my calendar. And now I'm like, I don't use a calendar like I used to. So it's a little bit, I mean, still use a calendar, but it's a little bit different for sure.
And I think getting away from the tyranny of the calendar and the tyranny of the clock is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And that's one of the gifts of
Yeah.
getting to this point.
Do you know, Tim, like I went to go see the Players Championships a couple weeks ago in Punta Vedra Beach. I know this is so crazy, but I love golf. I love it live. Okay, strange as it is, I like it on TV even. And I left my phone in the car, and normally I'd be like a wreck about it. I just said, well, it'll be fine. Someone knows how to get a hold of me. And that wouldn't have happened.
And I enjoy not having my phone with me sometimes and not worrying about it. Again, the
Right.
tyranny of the technology that's always, and I feel like I worry about, not to get off the subject, but I worry about young people who don't know how to turn that off and have that space, but I value it in my life very much.
Yes, I know. And I like getting like getting off social media a little bit, doing more reading, having time to read. I think that is such a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, you mentioned golf, and I just want to share with you that I was not a golf enthusiast, and I'd had a really hard time watching it. And then someone took me to a professional golf tournament,
Yeah.
and I was just engaged the whole time. I thought it was so cool. I loved the environment, and now I think about golf completely differently.
Me too. It's such an incredible skill too. Like they're incredible skill.
Yeah, and the environment of being on the beautiful golf course, it's lovely, and the people were well behaved, and I just liked it. So
Yeah.
everybody, if you're not into golf and you have a hard time watching it, you just need to find a way to go to one of those a golf tournament, and it'll change your mind about that. Okay, enough about golf. So I loved that. One of the things that I loved in the book that we use as our reference for this is he talks about the big life change at midlife. A lot of people make a big change. Like they move to a new place. Sometimes they move to a new country. As we've already mentioned, they slow down. They have more space in their time. They start trying new things. And it reminded me of sort of the way it felt during the pandemic. I felt like in the pandemic, we sort of stopped. Most people had more time. They were trying new things. It was sort of like a little
starters.
What?
They were making sourdough starters, Tim.
Exactly. And my point is, though, that was like a little taste of midlife changes to come. I felt like it was like a preview for people.
Yeah, or just the fact that you're not so tied down to the calendar. You're not so tied down to things. Oh, I have to go to the store and get this. I have to go to the store and get this. No, you're not getting anything.
Right. And we found that we could do it differently and simpler. All that's a gift. So when he talks about putting yourself in new environments, whether you're moving to Istanbul or you're simply moving down the street or you're simply going new places and trying new things, whatever it is, he calls it repotting ourselves in new soil. Isn't that fantastic? He talks about repotting ourselves in new soil in order to flourish again. You have the same seed, but you put it in different soil. I loved that.
I love it. That is so great. And that also goes along with his theme of harvesting. And, I love an extended metaphor, Tim.
And I think he's done a great job with that one. So I liked the idea of, because I'm not, even if I'm going somewhere, I'm still there, and who I am in my core essence, the seed of me is going to the new soil with me. I really love that. Here's a part of something he wrote: don't let the prospect of unfamiliar soil scare you from exploring what's next. You might be able to plant your seed in many places by thinking of your work life as a portfolio of activities. And he starts talking about the portfolio of your career. But before we jump into that concept, anything else you want to say about the soil, the new soil? Because I love that concept.
I too love that concept. I was talking with my mother-in-law the other day, and I think, we're moving, we're getting a new house. And I said, you know what? I could live with Noel in a van, a camper, on a plane, across the sea, in a boat. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's, I'm still me. You know what I mean? He's still him, and we could be anywhere and be fine. But that made me think of that conversation.
I like that very much. And also, who you are together is what's so great and so special and comfortable. And you're right. Wherever you are there together. And that's,
Right.
You're going to be fine.
And we're going to repot our soil, and we are going to grow strong for sure.
And sometimes, by the way, you have to repot a plant because it has grown too big for its pot. And sometimes I feel like that's another metaphor here that I like, is sometimes people need a bigger pot. I feel like right now in our world, people's pots are very small. It's just where they grew up and the people they know, and they're scared of all the other plants out in the world. And I'm like, come on, everybody, get a bigger pot. Go throw yourself into a field, like be brave and make your pot bigger. Have I overbeat that metaphor now?
No, but you can beat it all you want, because it is, I love that extended metaphor. It's terrific. No, and really thinking about that is helping me understand too, that it's okay to go different places. It's just, you're still yourself,
Right. And a lot of times that happens at this midlife point, is people decide to uproot themselves, shall we say, and plant themselves somewhere else. And I feel like this is a great thing. It can be very healthy. And even if you only do that by traveling every now and then and just going places, you can still come home to your safe, healthy little pot that you love. But I feel like people need to go out and see the world and meet other people that aren't like them. And I really encourage people to do that.
And that would help fertilize the soil when you see different people and you do different things. I think I like this, Tim.
I like it too. It reminded me of the one we had a few conversations ago where we talked about not trying to be youthful anymore, but trying to be useful. I loved that, and that stuck with me. And I feel like the idea of repotting my life and myself is such a tangible concept. I love it.
Yeah, I love that. And because we're going to move May 16th, May 17th, I'm going to consider it as a repotting.
And quite honestly, in case everybody doesn't know, my husband and I are selling our house as well, coincidentally, and we are moving to new pots. And I'm excited about it. It'll be a change. And I think it's scary and uncomfortable, but I'm going to grow from it.
Right. I think it's very common for this kind of thing to happen. I mean, you want to be able to enjoy your soil for longer, so sometimes you need to do some repotting for sure. So I think it's very common.
Yeah. And of course, we all know about the classic retiree who leaves the cold north and comes down to Florida. And listen, there's a lot of symbolism and freedom that comes with leaving behind things that were confining and starting afresh. And, I think it's a great thing. So one of the comments he talks about, as I already mentioned, is a portfolio career. And one of the things he talks about is another concept around this. This is probably the last thing we will be talking about here on this topic, is rethinking your career and your life. And usually when people are going through the main part of their career like this, like we said, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is my career. The great thing that you can do when you get to midlife is you can decide, okay, do I want to keep doing some of that? What other things am I interested in? So he talks about sort of creating a portfolio of all the things that you can do and are good at and want to do. So rather than having this is my job, you have a whole portfolio of all the things you can do. For example, he says, even if you have your job, talk to your boss about working less and having more freedom. Then he says you can become a consultant. Marianne, know you've done this. You've used your expertise and people have asked you to consult and work on projects with them.
Correct.
He also talks about following your passion. We've already talked about that. What am I interested in? What do I want to go do more of? Am I getting into photography? Am I getting into bird watching? Am I getting into baking? Whatever it is, go out and take that time affluence and use it and go do it. And then he even talks about monetizing other things that you hadn't thought of, like your space, turning it into an Airbnb, perhaps, if you're going to be leaving or whatever. So thinking about your whole environment and the way you use your time and how you define yourself. I like this idea of a portfolio of a bunch of different things that all make up your new life.
Right. And you take all, you're reaping again, to give more soil analogies, and more gardening analogies. You're reaping all of the benefit of all those years that you put into, a new shape. And I think it's very interesting. Tim, I'm just going to put this out there. I would like to be a professional organizer.
Awesome. You would be great at that.
And I've been thinking a lot about it lately, but it's not my career, it's not my job, but I was thinking that everything that I have done, what made me think of it is everything that I have done in all my jobs, first as a teacher and everything I have done has kind of been in that kind of very organized manner. And, it's just it's a skill adjacent to what I've done. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that is a fantastic example for this conversation, because that's what we're talking about. Sit down and figure out, what am I good at? What do I like to do? What are the skills I have? And then what unexpected new ways can I use those skills and that expertise? And that's a great example, because you are great at, you have always had to be planned and organized and help other people be planned and organized. Why not use that in a new way? I think that's a great example.
Oh, thanks, Tim. I mean, I've just been thinking about all of the things that I'm good at and how I can, how it could be pushed forward. I'm kind of moving into a community where people may need that kind of stuff.
Everybody needs that. You came and helped me when I was moving 2.5 years ago. You came and helped me start to organize my life and purge and clean out. And it was unbelievable. By the way, when he talks about, he talks about figuring out these things that you like, what are my skills, right? He says, sit down and talk with your partner or friend or your husband or whoever and say, what mastery or gift do I have to offer? And he says, just to sit down and don't make it a big deal, but what's the first things that come to you? And just like you said, what am I good at after all of this work that I've done and all of my experiences? We've talked about this before. You're going to harvest all the things that you've learned and all the experiences you've had and all the wisdom you've created. And gosh, I'm really good at being organized and I can help other people get perfect example.
And I can run a calendar like nobody's business. I can schedule like nobody's business. I'm not bragging. Please don't think that I am.
It's a skill.
It was so much part of my skill and my life for so long, and run a meeting, schedule 17,000 meetings,
Right. But to your point, there are a lot of people that are not. Believe me, a lot of people are not good with their calendar. They're not good with scheduling. They're not good with their time. They're not good about staying on. And you could be very helpful. Or, as you said, maybe organize someone's home, organize someone's closet, organize someone's workspace, their calendar. I think that's a great, great example of, you sat down and you thought about, what are the things I like to do and what do I come away with after this whole career? Right. And you're having the time, now that you have this time affluence to sort of stop and think. I think this is what's going to happen. I would encourage everybody to do this. Take a few minutes and think, well, what are the things that I'm really into or that I've learned, or what skills do I have after all of this? And then I bet I can use that in some way I'd never thought of. And that's his point, sort of like create a whole portfolio of all these things that you can
Exactly.
help with, and then do them in new ways.
And I have to tell you, Tim, this took me a long time to come to it because I couldn't. It was hard to separate me from a job, and hard to separate skills from the job, and hard to separate things. And I was like, it's taken a while to get there, and it does take a while. Thankfully, I've been comfortable in that process. So, you know,
Right. But I think the point is recognizing that, okay, this is something I have to grow into, right? And I have to get used to these new ideas. But the time will come when you're like, well, let me sit down with somebody, my other half or whoever, and just sort of, just
right,
brainstorm a little. What are these things because I mean, I've been doing this too. Like I've spent a lot of time lately thinking about what are the things that really bring me joy? How do I want to spend my time? And then what do I do with that? What do I want to do about
right.
these interests and things that I want to spend time doing? What do I want to do with that? And the lovely gift of the midlife time is that you get to choose that, and you have time and space in your life to pursue it, and not frantically, but at your own calmer pace.
I totally agree. And I think it takes the calmness. Like, you really need to be calm in order to do that. Like,
Right. So again, one of the gifts of being able to slow down, as you're describing, is that you start to have time to have those thoughts and think
right.
about these things, and you're not just frantically going. And I am loving the idea of having more time affluence in my life, and being able to think about a new portfolio of ways to give back and be useful.
Not useful. Although still think you're youthful, Jim.
Well, I try to keep some of that going. I think we're all still a big kid a lot. I'm a big kid anyway, a lot of the time, but I like that part of me too. I don't want to lose that either. I can get very serious. I know,
Yeah.
I can get a little serious. I'm a Capricorn, everybody. So, I come by it honestly, but I
I
do think.
emotional. I'm a Cancer. Isn't that what we do? I don't know. That's
Anyway, all right. So we've talked about having a time affluence. We've talked about a portfolio of your career. And especially we have talked about repotting yourselves in new soil, wherever that means. I love that phrase. That's going to be my takeaway from tonight's conversation.
Mhm. But certainly you may not know what it means yet, but certainly like the thoughts about of repotting is, a worthy conversation to have you with yourself or someone else.
Right. And just having that concept in your head, then the time will come when suddenly you'll go like, oh, I am repotting myself. And maybe it's uprooting to a new place, or maybe it's simply surrounding yourself with a whole different set of flowers and friends or activities, or being a beginner at something, and being daring, and not worrying so much about what everybody thinks and what you're is this fit my image, and am I getting my status? Like, you can just let all of that stuff go. That is the gift of having a great midlife time.
I love it. I love it.
Thanks, Mary. This was fun.
As always.
All right, thank you so much.